Hi, and welcome to this exciting panel with some of the best and brightest leaders in college athletics in Texas. I'm Crystal Galney. I'm a news anchor with KBTX TV, and today we are joined virtually with 4 individuals from A&M Athletics. First, we have Ross Bjork, the Director of Athletics for the Aggies, and I'm going to turn it over to Ross to introduce your colleagues.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you for hosting today's panel for this very important topic for today's environment around college athletics. It is our pleasure to be here on the Texas Tribune Festival. I know that this is very important for Texas A&M to have a presence, and we appreciate the opportunity to be in this virtual world that we're all living in today. So I'll start by introducing Carlina Sample. Carlina is a junior on our women's soccer team. She is a defender, which means she doesn't score a lot, but she is key to shutout victories like we had last week against Ole Miss. We started out our season 3-0. Carlina played 88 minutes in that game, and she hails from Frisco, Texas, and Reedy High School, and her major is telecommunications media studies. Also importantly, Carlina is a leader in our athletic department. She is currently the president of Blueprint, which is Black Leaders Who Undertake Excellence. It's a new organization that was created this spring and summer to provide leadership for our Black student athletes here at Texas A&M. And she's also a member of our Student Athlete Advisory Council. So thank you, Carlina, for being here. And then next we have Kristen Brown. Kristen is our Deputy Athletic Director and Chief Diversity Officer. She started right after the pandemic hit our world. So she started in the spring and immediately had to be tethered to her condo. But now she's out and she's providing great leadership. Kristen came to us from the University of Maryland. She's also worked at the Big Ten, the Big East, the American Conference, and played basketball at Northern Illinois University. And Kristen has a big portfolio here at Texas A&M, overseeing several of our sports and athletic teams, overseeing our student athlete development services and academic support. And she is a right-hand person to me and my leadership here at Texas A&M. And then last on the panel is Dr. Ryan Pitzinger. Ryan is our Assistant Athletic Director for Counseling and Sports Psychology. There's never been more of an emphasis and more needs around the mental health support of our student athletes than in today's environment, and Ryan leads those efforts. He has been here at Texas A&M since 2016, and he serves all of our student athletes in just honoring the unique demands and experiences that our student athletes face every single day. He's got his bachelor's degree from the University of Utah, master's from Cal State Long Beach. It's not a bad place to go to school. And then a PhD from the University of Iowa. So we are great to have Dr. Pitzinger's leadership. So that's our panel, and we are honored to be here today, Crystal. Thank you so much.
All right, great panel. Thank you, Ross. I'm going to start with you, Ross. When did you realize that COVID-19 was going to be a real challenge for college athletics?
It's pretty fascinating, the journey in all of this. Actually, this first hit our campus at the end of January, when there was an A&M University staff member who was traveling back from Wuhan, China, and was suspected of having the coronavirus. And we were actually hosting a track meet that weekend when the news hit, and we got calls from teams that were coming into that track meet asking, is it safe to come to College Station? Is there any protocols that are in place around the track meet? And we're like, what are you talking about? Of course it's safe. Of course we have protocols like we always do. So actually this started, and then soon after that on our campus in the month of February, there was meetings that were starting to take place. They were in person at that point in time, but meetings were starting to happen. What did all this look like? What did we know about it? I remember talking to Commissioner Sankey in late February, and who's the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, and we were talking about the next phase in all of this is what happens when there's community spread. So we talked about that in late February. We go to early March and we're at the SEC basketball tournament, and we arrived on Tuesday, March the 10th. And by that afternoon, we started to see some shutdown around college sports. Wednesday, March 11th, the Rudy Gobert incident, Utah Jazz, they're getting ready to play a game. The game gets halted basically in warm-ups, and it's basically that's when the world pretty much shut down. So sports has really been a center of this all along. And then the next day, we canceled the SEC basketball tournament. Then the next day, Friday, March 13th, we basically shut down all of college sports for the spring, and we all just had to start learning about this. So it really started back in January, February, early March. We've learned so much along the way. It's hard to believe as we sit here, we're wrapping up 28 weeks since March 13th. And a lot has happened, a lot of planning that we'll get into. And so that's when we realized that COVID-19 was going to impact everyone, but especially college athletics.
It has been a crazy time indeed. Carlina, give us a peek behind the scenes from the student athlete perspective. How has your academic and competitive experience been impacted by COVID?
Yeah, so I would say my academic and athletic experience have kind of been impacted in similar ways, and just that, you know, this time with COVID and this couple months that we've been dealing with it have been it's been a time of adapting and adjusting and, you know, learning habits and enforcing those habits, just from wearing masks in practice and, you know, monitoring symptoms and making sure that we are doing like daily check-ins with temperature and everything, just to keep yourself safe, and also like your teammates, your coaches, your staff, everyone that you come in contact with through practice, games, meals, treatment. So it's kind of bigger picture than just yourself. And then in terms of academics, it's just forced me to be more disciplined and you know, learn new study tactics and learn what works best for me now that all my classes are online now, and I'm more of an in-person physical learner. So it's been an adjustment for me, but it's been a little bit of a challenge, but with challenges comes growth. So, you know, I'm just thankful that we have been able to play. We've had games, we've been able to practice safely so far. So
it's a great perspective you have. Well, Ross, if COVID wasn't enough of a challenge, this summer brought social unrest to the forefront in unprecedented ways. How do you lead the department and student athletes through this?
It's a great question, and you're exactly right. In the middle of all of this, here comes the social injustices, the social unrest, and our student athletes were at the forefront of all of this. And how do we provide leadership? There's no manual. In COVID, there's no manual in the social unrest matters. You can't flip to page 72 and go through, okay, this is how you map this out. So what we tried to do throughout all of this was really just stay informed and really stay organized in all of this. And then the bottom line as it relates to the social matters is really communication. Constant communication. Carlina's probably been in so many meetings around this topic. Specifically, Ryan has been at the forefront, Kristen, all of our staff, and then empathy. We have to have empathy. I can't understand everything that goes on for every person, but I can listen. We can have compassion, and then we can try to help. And that's what we've tried to do, is show people that we care through actions. We waited a little bit before we put out any sort of statement or anything like that. And what we decided to do was do a petition and say that if you're committed to these principles and these action items, sign here. And we had over 7,000 people sign that petition around the community, our student athletes, our coaches. And then we use that as sort of a guide. And then Carlina, in her leadership with our student athletes, and Kristen and Ryan, now we've got other plans that we'll get into, but that's what we've tried to do through all of this. It is unprecedented to have everything come together at the same time. It's challenging, but that's why we're here, is to be leaders and show support for our student athletes. And we've just tried to keep them at the forefront of everything that we do.
I'd like to hear from Kristen. With two significant challenges occurring simultaneously, how do you navigate both and prioritize what to tackle?
Yeah, so in terms of how we navigated this, it starts from the top and with leadership. And I'm not just saying this because he's my boss and he's on this panel, but we're so fortunate to have, Ross leading us and at the top of our organization. And from the very beginning, he's been very steady, very even keel, and our approach has always been to listen, to learn, to gather as much information as possible, to be strategic, and to not necessarily rush to make decisions. And when you have that as kind of the foundation for how you navigate and how you lead, it helps you through these challenging situations. And then in terms of how we prioritize things, I think sometimes you choose your priorities and sometimes your priorities choose you, quite frankly. And I think the circumstances that we've gone through this summer definitely exhibit that. So how we prioritize things as it related to COVID, early on, we knew that athletic activity was being canceled. We knew that we were going to be working from home. We knew that academically we were shifting from in-person classes to virtual classes. But at some point, we were going to have to return to normal, and we were going to have to ramp back up to that. So it was probably early April, mid-April, where we started a few different working groups to specifically address some different areas, whether that was student-athlete support services and academics, financial and budget planning, facilities and game day experience and operations, return to work for staff, return to activity for student athletes. We started planning very, very early on, knowing that at some point there was going to be decisions made at a state level, or decisions made at an NCAA and SEC level, or locally from an institutional level that would allow us to start to return. So we were prepared well in advance of when those decisions were made. And then as it relates to priorities with social unrest, unfortunately, that was one of the situations where your priorities choose you. And, I don't think anybody was necessarily prepared for everything that happened this summer and the subsequent unrest that followed. But we worked really hard in terms of our diversity and inclusion plan. And unfortunately, we had some gaps, specifically as it relates to racial and social injustice. So we did a lot of listening. We did a lot of learning, a lot of gathering of information to really put a plan together that supported our staff, supported our student athletes, and inspired change within the Aggieland community.
Ryan, as someone who has such a direct role in the mental health of student athletes, I imagine 2020 has been very busy for you. How would you describe the impact of COVID-19 and social unrest on student athletes' mental health? And how do you support 600 student athletes through these challenging times?
Yeah, so it's been very busy, Crystal. And I think one of the things, some of the direct impacts that it's had, that COVID has had, is there was some fear initially about just the virus and how it's going to impact people. And then I think that morphed into a little bit of anxiety about, gosh, what happens if I get it? What is this going to do to my collegiate career, not only as a student, but also as a student athlete? And then there was some fears about, okay, well, once I return back to sport, am I still going to be able to perform at the same level? How is this going to impact my performance, the outcome? And so there was a lot of discussions around how do we manage those emotions, processing some of those fears and those concerns. And there was a lot of compassion for other people as well of, okay, hey, how do we take care of our community? It's a lot of the student athletes weren't just worried about themselves, but they were worried about their families, staff, their teammates, coaches, things like that. So it was really nice to see that. Not surprising, but just really nice. In terms of the social unrest, unfortunately, this isn't something new. These conversations I've been having my entire career with student athletes, and this is something that we take really seriously within the counseling and sports psychology department, as well as just the athletic department as a whole. And so we've been doing a lot of different activities and interventions to help with this. And so one of which is we started Connecting Conversations a number of years ago. And that's really a space that we would get staff together once a month to be able to talk about things like systemic racism, power, privilege, oppression, inclusion, diversity. And so we really just took what we were already doing and tried to bolster that a little bit. And so we had things that were particular for student athletes as well as for our staff, because we kind of figured that, hey, it starts at the top, and if we can all be rowing in the same direction, that's going to help. Also, with the leadership of Ross and Kristen and Joe Fields, we were able to put different presentations together. So we have met with every team on numerous occasions to be able to talk about and process the outcome and the impact of a lot of these events upon not only the student athletes, but also the coaches and support staff. And then also between myself and Dr. Lauren Craig, who's another counseling and sports psychologist within our department, really just expanded how we connect with student athletes. And so we're used to having people come into our offices, and so we've really had to change that. And so there's been a lot more Zoom meetings and just conversations on the phone, as well as conversations out of practice and things like that. And so really just tried to make ourselves more accessible and in different ways that fit the current landscape.
Carlina, in August, Texas A&M announced the launch of the Blueprint. Tell us about the program and what you hope it accomplishes.
Yes, so like Ross said earlier, the Blue and Blueprint stands for Black Leaders Who Undertake Excellence. And basically, we want it to be a environment where Black student athletes are able to express themselves comfortably, have those conversations that they may want to have and just may not have the environment or atmosphere to have them with. And it's not only for Black student athletes to grow, it's for any allies who want to learn and want to be a part of change and being part of that unit that A&M says that we are. And so yeah, it's mainly to provide student athletes with resources, confidence in themselves outside of their sports, provide them with leadership qualities, and so that to the real world, they're confident in themselves, like they're confident on the field or on the court. What we want to accomplish through it, just through with everything going on that's happened through George Floyd, recently with Breonna Taylor, I'm really thankful that we have Ross and to help make this possible. They're and they took the time to not just listen to us, but hear us and hear what we needed from them and what we were asking, why we thought it was necessary to make a club like this and the benefits we see behind it, short term and long term. So it's been a journey. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad that we are able to, get it started and make it happen. And so yeah, it's been fun.
Very cool. Well, Kristen, just a few weeks ago, Texas A&M announced the Aggie Commitment. How did this initiative come about, and what are some of its goals?
Sure. Similar to the Blueprint, which really it's been a collaboration between our staff and our student athletes. But after all of the events that occurred this summer, we did, like we mentioned before, a lot of listening and learning, and took our time to really slowly and strategically develop our plan that specifically addresses racial and inequity and social injustice. And so that's how the Aggie Commitment came about. There are 4 main areas of this plan that we're looking to address. The first being hiring, retention, and representation. So what are we doing from a hiring practices and policies and procedures that may be part of the problem and might prohibit representation within our athletic department and staff? We're developing plans to create a diverse pool of candidates for future positions that are open. And then trying to create leadership and training programs for our managers and how to address and manage racism and microaggressions. The second area is celebrating Black history and Black excellence. So around our facilities, you'll soon see different ways that we're going to highlight our former Black student athletes as well as our current Black student athletes. So we're working on a mural that will celebrate the first Black student athlete in each sport. We're working on another mural that will recognize significant achievements by former Black students. So you'll see a lot of different things around our facilities. The next area is student athlete experience. And so a big piece of this will be continuing to support our Blueprint group and the initiatives that come out of that. Also, there is a unified initiative that I know that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but some really, really cool things that are going to be rolled out starting this weekend with the football game and then subsequent games after that. And then lastly, just continuing education. How can we continue to educate our staff and make sure that this is not just a movement, but it's a moment and something that's long lasting. So we'll continue to have diversity training for our staff and our student athletes, starting specifically with issues related to social injustice and racial equity. And then probably the biggest thing that's happened so far was our voter registration initiative in conjunction this past Tuesday with National Voter Registration Day. So that kicked off several weeks of events and initiatives going into Election Day, where we'll continue to stress voter registration, voter education in conjunction with the Election Day on November 3rd. So we're really excited about the Aggie commitment. We've got a working group of about 25 staff and student athletes and coaches who are really working together to attack these 4 different areas and continue to not only address the goals that we've already stated, but continue to make sure that we have goals and continue to move this program forward.
Kristen just touched on the unified platform. Ross saw the unified patches on the uniforms at this weekend's football game. Are other teams wearing the patch? And can you tell us what the unified platform is all about?
No, thank you for asking that. I've got a button too, a lapel button that says unified on it. And so, yes, this is the department theme that we're putting on uniforms. We've got buttons, we've got lapel pins. Ryan, Kristen, Carlina, you'll get yours if you haven't gotten it already. But the idea was really to follow the lead of our student athletes. We had a march back in June, and the description of that march was unity. And we actually had some T-shirts made up that many of our student athletes are still wearing, and that theme seemed to resonate with everyone. And so as we were going with competition and planning the seasons, we wanted to give our student athletes a chance to use their platform, use their voice with a message, and unified seemed to signal that. So unified means that we've made progress, but it's not enough yet, right? And so we know that there's too much divisiveness in our country right now. We need people to come together. That's what Aggies do. When we saw off varsity's horns, right, we come together. We need to use that example in that spirit that this is a great place, but we're not perfect. The world's not perfect. And so we want to use that platform to bring people together, to do things that are tangible, like the voter registration, do other things in our community that can make a difference to change and to have people understand what's going on in our country and in our communities. And so that's where the unified theme came from. To me, it's student athlete led. And again, we're here to support them. And as they come up with ideas and come up with plans, we want to embrace those. And that's what we've done. And that's where the unified theme came from.
Great. This question is for everyone. What have you learned through these challenging times, and how will you use what you've learned in the future? Let's start with you, Kristen.
Yeah, I think there are probably 2 things that I've learned. First, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Whether that's been COVID, which we're 6-7 months into this, and it may be around for a little while, or social unrest, which social issues and racial issues have been going on for years, and we're not going to solve it through one initiative or one platform, but continuing to hack away and chip away at each of these things, and we'll continue to make progress. We know that we will. And probably the second thing is just the importance of supporting others and serving others, and whatever your personal issues are or circumstances. It was moving in the middle of COVID and dealing with all of this on top of just the work-related things, but shifting my focus to how I can best support and serve others and try to make a difference that way.
What about you, Dr. Pitzinger? What have you learned through all of this?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot. I think some of the things that stand out is really first the importance of being able to validate other people's experiences and really honor those with empathy and compassion. The second would be the power of really listening to other people, right? Listening to try to understand instead of trying to form an argument or kind of change someone else's perspective. And so whether it is due to COVID concerns or some of the systemic racism and social injustice, of how can we really listen to try to get a better understanding. And then the third would be ways that I can educate myself and that others can educate themselves to make informed decisions and have a positive impact upon others in our community.
Carlina, as a student athlete, what have you learned through all of this, and how do you hope to use that in the future?
Yeah, so something I've learned, I think, is just the power of student athletes and what the power that we have. And sometimes I think people even take power and give it a negative connotation. So I would say even like the influence that student athletes have on the community and, you know, just our peers and people from other teams. I've done a lot of personal growth, I think, in this time of COVID, just in the different leadership positions I've been put in and the different pools I've been able to dip my toe in and be a part of, and I'm thankful for them. And, you know, I've just learned how to use my voice in the best way, and the best way to reach my audience, I guess, or my whoever's watching, fans, whatever, whoever it is. So just the best way to communicate and, you know, the influence that I have on everyone.
Great. And Ross, finally with you, what have you learned?
Learned some new words. Social distancing. The military actually calls it tactical dispersion, whatever that means, right? Contact tracing, Zoom. We had no idea what Zoom was back in February, but now it's like our best friend. We can't live without it. I've also learned that our world right now is not necessarily day by day. It's almost minute by minute, with things just evolving and changing. We've had to probably be as nimble and as flexible as possible. I think we always, in leadership, I think you always try to pride yourself on being proactive and charting a 5-year vision and a 10-year plan. And to Kristen's point earlier, this has really kind of chosen us, and we've had to be fluid and be nimble. And so we've learned that. But we've also, I think, we've had to learn to care deeper. We've had to learn to listen more and really wake up as a country, as an athletic department, whatever environment that we're in. And maybe we just had too much tunnel vision, and now we need to lift our heads up and really, really understand what's happening. And then the creativity to be as safe as possible with all the different protocols that are in place and all the medical procedures and the virus mitigation tactics, things that we just never had to think of at all. And then the last thing that I'll say is, in some ways, we've had to answer almost for the first time, why are we playing college sports? Why are we doing this in the middle of a pandemic and social unrest? And not that we've necessarily had to defend why we're doing this, but I think for me, it actually further cements the value of athletics, that through athletics, we provide the platforms for student athletes like Carlina to achieve their full potential. Look at the leadership lessons that she's learned being thrust into all of this. So I think in a lot of ways, it actually validates that athletics can be more powerful than it ever was before, because we can bring people together. We can have common bonds. We all want the same thing. And so I think for me, it's actually strengthened my belief in college athletics having the value that it has, and we need to continue to get better. So those are the things that I've learned.
Some great perspective. Hey, this has been great. Ross, Kristen, Ryan, Carlina, thank you all so much for being part of this panel. This wraps up our session on the unique challenges of college athletics in 2020. And we just thank you all for being here, and thanks for watching.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.